everyone, my name's Emma. Today we are talking about the movie called Loving. When it comes to choices and decisions, the ones that we make every single day will help us create the world that we want to live in. That's what we talk about here on this channel. How can we take our power back every single day by creating more intentional decisions? Loving is a movie that chronicles the story of Richard Loving and Mildred Loving. They are a couple and they are an interracial couple. And their story sparked the passing of the Loving versus Virginia Act by the Supreme Court, which legalized interracial marriage in the entire country. Now, that is only 54 years ago, if you are counting. So, Loving chronicles what happened. How did this come to pass? And the two fell in love and they got married up in the north in one of the states that it was legal, whereas in 31 states it was illegal for interracial marriage until 1967 when it was legalized in every single state. And they went there, they got married, and then they moved back down to Virginia, which is where both of them were from. And then they started to create a life together. They built a house, they were living happily. And then one day people were figuring out that they were living together and the police was called in, and for a year they were put into jail. And they were the strongest case put in front of the Supreme Court to overturn the law that said interracial marriage was not allowed. So that is the premise of the movie. It, of course, goes into the love story and the truth of what happened and how it affected them for the rest of their lives. He only lived for about 7 years after they were finally able to legally get married. And their story is one that if they didn't go through what they did, a lot of people would not be able to live a free life to marry who they want to. And 54 years later, it is still something that continues to be a problem, unfortunately. But that is the reality of the world. A lot of people are judged for being in interracial marriage across almost any interracial marriage, and it is quite a sight to see that this is something that we're still facing. But considering it's been 54 years that it's been legalized, it's hard to imagine that it isn't a problem. But the thing is, it is only a problem if we do not educate ourselves, if we do not learn about what is going on in the world, about what has happened, about why this is so important to talk about. If we don't understand that, then this continues to be a problem to people. And only when we stand up and we say, hey, this is not okay, you cannot be discriminating against people, and we force the government's hand to actually pay attention to what's going on and outlawing things that should never have happened, until we hold the government accountable, until we hold ourselves accountable. We take responsibility that this is the life that we have been handed, that no matter when you came to America, this is the world that you inherited. We have to understand that this is the story that it is right now, but we get to change it. We get to choose what direction America's story moves in now. And it is because people stand up and they believe in something and they don't let it go that change actually happens. So because Richard Loving and Mildred Loving actually loved each other so much that their love couldn't be forced apart by anyone's racism, anyone's beliefs, they were able to change the nation. And that is inspirational. It is sad in its own way, and it's hard to see that so many people have to become activists because they are just constantly looked down upon. Their life is not able to be lived the way that they want to because somebody is deciding that it's not okay. And I want to talk about that a little bit more, about how people are forced into activism, even if they don't want to. A lot of people have felt they have to take on that role, even if that's not what they want to be doing, because they really believe that nobody else is doing it. And sadly, a lot of that is true, that there's not enough activists talking about what is going on in its entirety to let people who have to suffer through those experiences actually live their lives. That's the point of activism, is to take on that burden of talking about what's going on so that people who have to already live in a way that is different from most of society because of whatever burden society has placed on them, they shouldn't have to then be an activist on top of that. They should be allowed to live their life out in whatever ways they want to, as an artist, as an engineer, as people who are in love. They should be able to do that, and that is why activism is so important. And it is something that people should be actively choosing and not being forced into because they don't see people doing it. So whether you just want to learn more about what's going on in the world, learn more about history, and the more we learn about history, the less chance history has of repeating itself. We need to repeat history so history doesn't repeat itself. And we need to keep doing that in order to let people enjoy their lives. They shouldn't have to be worrying about being discriminated against because of what is happening in the world. People should be allowed to live, and they shouldn't be forced into any activist role. They should just be allowed to live their lives. And the people who want to be activists should be taking that role and responsibility seriously, and to continue to see the connections between many of these movements and how they overlap, how they interconnect, and how when we are hurting one movement by what we are saying, we are ultimately hurting every movement. And that is not okay. We need to stand up and we need to say, you know what? As an activist, if that is something you are choosing to do, you need to be actively learning information constantly. You need to be adding in more resources that you are looking at, understanding what's going on in the world, and viewpoints will change because you will learn something that you will not have known if you're continuing to search for that and to choose that. And that if you are an activist and you want to do that, you need to be doing that. That's why when people are forced into activism and they're not interested in looking at everything because that's not what they want to do, and that's okay. It's hard to have them be in that position because activism is something you have to work on. It is a job in and of itself. And the most effective activism looks at intersectionalism across every single movement, across every single human rights violation, and talking about all of them and gaining those perspectives. Of course, you're not going to gain perspectives overnight, but it's something that you're actively doing. And the more that you learn, the more you're able to help people and to reach and to connect and to see different viewpoints and to find commonalities between you and whoever it is you're talking to so that you can have a productive conversation. That is the goal of activism. People shouldn't have to be activists because their way of life or them being alive is deemed a problem in whatever society's standards are. So activism and active choice, it shouldn't be forced onto people. It should be one that is personal and that is decided. It isn't forced on anyone. And it was forced on Mildred Loving and Richard Loving, and it's not okay. It's not fair. But they were able to change the lives in the course of history, but it was at a great cost to them. And that is why I choose to be an activist, to continue to talk about this, to hold these conversations, and to hold myself accountable and the people in my life and people that I can reach accountable for understanding that our choices and decisions affect so many people's lives, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to be wary of what is happening, and we need to make sure that it doesn't keep happening, that we are making the change in the world that we want to see, that we are being that change. We've talked about how people who just decided to believe in themselves and stand up were change the world, and it is an active choice to be an activist, and we need to understand that. I will repeat that throughout April when we do Activism April and why it's so important. And if we are fighting between ourselves, if we're saying, oh, this or that or the other thing, it isn't helpful. We need to come together. We need to understand that the story can change if we decide to be the change, if we decide to work together. It takes more than one person, but it does start with one person. It starts with that first step. And we need to be that first step. We need to be that jumping off point to let society know that the change is coming, the change is here, and the change is in all of us. But it only works if we continue to seek those perspectives, those resources, to talk to people, to get uncomfortable, to be aware of where we stand right now and understand that whatever viewpoints we have, we can do better. We can learn more. We can create a more inviting world, a more inclusive world, a world that is accessible to everyone. So Loving made love accessible to more people, yet even to this day, there is still impediments to it. The Equal Rights Act for equal marriage, that anyone can get married, wasn't passed until 2015. There's much to be done, and every stride in the right direction should be celebrated, and it should be something that we hold very dear, and it should be inspiration to do more, not to say, hey, our job is done. The job is never done, but we can get closer to creating that world if we choose to be that change. We can do it together, and accepting that people have a lot to learn, accepting we have a lot to learn. I feel like I'm constantly learning, and I am learning because I want to be a responsible citizen of the world, and that is actively trying to help people. I hope that you're trying to do that too, whatever ways you want, whatever ways you can. We all have different capacities of what we can do, but we all have the capacity as humans to hold on to humanity and to really find the value in love and in peace and seeking perspective. We can do it. I know we can. The choice is yours. It always has been. I hope to see you soon. I hope you got something out of this. Thank you for being here and sharing with me your stories and sharing with me what else we can do. There's so much, and we can do it together. We have to. Hope to see you soon. But until then, I hope that you have an amazing day.